Hey sellers, this is Casey Murray, the Virtual CRO, here to talk today about 10 terms that you should know, especially as you're entering maybe an enterprise sales job on the outside or even on the inside as a BDR. So let's get to it. All right, your first term would be an ICP. You'll hear your company talk about that. That's an ideal customer profile. That's the makeup of a company that should see value in what your product does. And based on elements like their size, the elements in their technology stack, products they might already be running, compliance issues, regulatory issues, geographic limitations. They could be a retail company, they could be manufacturing. Elements of what they already naturally do will align themselves well with what your company's solution does, which makes them an ideal customer profile, which in turn means someone that you want to sell to. So you should be able to show up and know about their business and know how you've helped other customers in their space as well, which is always more valuable than hoping and trying to figure out, will they see value in us? So when you can walk in and say, we work with folks already in your industry, people in your specific role, and we know the challenges you're facing, elements of my GC2 selling system that we talk about in other videos, you have a really good chance to start with the very first conversation and be on point and provide value so you don't have to barrage them with discovery questions. So that's your ICP when you hear that reference, usually defined jointly by sales and marketing, but it'll be put out for you as a guide to say, if you're gonna go call on someone, try to match them up against the criteria that we know we already sell well into. Next will be a TAM, another marketing term, the total addressable market. They'll try to figure out, is this a big market we're going after? Is our ICP going to be 1,000 customers for us to pursue? Or are we going after only a top 100 list? And that'll impact how they market and how you sell as well. So if you hear the term TAM, that's the total addressable market. They will inflate that number and the value as they're trying to increase the valuation of the potential company too. When they're trying to say, oh, there's thousands of people that could use us, they'll pump that up when they're trying to be in funding rounds and trying to figure out, are we going after a big market? For you as a seller, though, your TAM is going to be related to that ICP. Next, you might hear BANT, kind of old school selling. Yeah, we use the BANT method here, and it's a qualification technique where you're trying to identify the budget, the authority, the need, and the timing of this project. And you're sending with your clipboard to figure out, hey, Mr. Buyer, I only want to talk to you if you have budget. Do you have authority? What's the need and what's the timing? Personally, I feel like that's extremely antiquated, and I hope you're not asked to sell in that manner, but there's still a lot of sales methodologies that are out there based on that. I find that offensive to go in and have them tell me, are you worth me talking to you? Do you have budget? And if not, do you have authority? I don't want to talk to you. I feel like that's pretty potentially rude in today's market, where you should know that before you even go in. Looking back to your ICP, you should have an understanding of why you're here and why you think you can provide value. So if you're pushed for a qualification scheme around BANT, at least know what it means, but I hope you aspire to be a better seller than staying in that realm. Next, CRM. You're going to get asked to record your data as you interact with customers into a CRM, customer relationship management software. Salesforce set the bar for this industry. HubSpot is gradually taking over, which I prefer. I think it's a better, more useful, easier to use tool, and it's got great knowledge base. It's not as expensive, and I feel like you can get up and running in HubSpot in minutes. I struggle to see value with Salesforce for a lot of organizations that overspend on it and never really get much value out of it. It has tons of integrations. It has a great ecosystem. It's got a Fortune 500 cachet, but I think for what most people need, which is glorified contact management, who did I call? What did I talk about? Who do I need to call next week so I don't forget? HubSpot is a tremendous product in that space too. So next, you'll hear an ASP reference, average sales price. What do we typically sell for? What's the average? You might hear that in an interview recruit process. You may need to know that as a seller. It's the range that you typically sell for. That one's pretty straightforward, but if they ask about ASPs, that's your average sales price. Next, ARR, annual recurring revenue. as most products are moving to SaaS methodologies for their pricing, they care about the roll-up of all the accounts that are buying at the same time and what does that equal into an annual recurring revenue. It's the value of the contract on a yearly basis. Sell multiple years, single years, there's different flavors of it, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a value for the end of the year for those 12 months periods. And you may have flexibility that they have to pay a year, or they may have to pay quarterly, they may have to pay monthly, but it still all rolls up into an ARR. Do me a personal favor, don't ask about reoccurring revenue. That is not the term, that's not even a word. The word is recurring, ARR, so that's your ARR term. SaaS, probably could have started with this one, software as a service. I think everyone knows that term now, but just to be safe, the SaaS model, again, back to Salesforce, probably one of the first companies to kind of introduce this. We'll run the software for you, we'll update it. You don't have to buy servers and host it in your database. We're going to run it essentially in our cloud. You'll access it over the internet, and if there's fixes to it, we can take care of that more readily than your team having to get into patching and updating and downloading CDs and disks and trying to do new versioning, which was painful for companies. But SaaS really blew that model up and basically said, hey, you should be able to use software as a service available to you all the time, mobile, on your phone, over the internet as well. And that's the obvious cornerstone of most of what the companies today are trying to be, because it creates recurring revenue for the company versus what was a perpetual license in the old days where you paid for it up front and then you had to pay for ongoing support, which was about 20 to 30% annually of that cost. So now you're not paying as much up front, but you're paying for it forever. So it's really a better model for the vendors. The only win for customers is that it's an operating expense versus a capital expense, which can have some tax benefits to them, but the payback period typically is in about 18 months versus what the perpetual licenses used to be. So in the long run, almost every customer is spending more for these solutions under SaaS. Next, another marketing salesy term, CAC, C-A-C. Customer acquisition cost. If you're a seller, you might not come across that too often, but your marketers will definitely reference, hey, what is our CAC? What is our cost to acquire a customer? How many trade shows? How much ad spend? How much are we spending on salespeople? What does a discovery call cost us? How many meetings? What are we doing? Zooms, travels, in-person expenses. All those things get rolled into a customer acquisition cost. You'll hear that in higher transaction companies that might sell with one-call closes or even sell over the internet or maybe even be retail type sales. But the CAC, CAC number is important for them to understand, because if they want to invest more money into one of those channels, they want to be able to project that it's going to pay for itself at some time. So they need to know the cost to acquire each of those customers. Next acronym is GTM, go to market. Again, you may hear that from marketing or sales, but what's our GTM strategy? How are we going to market? Are we going to build an inbound sales force and try to dial? Are we going to email? Are we going to do trade shows? Are we going to spend a lot on ads? Are we going to reference sale? Are we going to use Gartners and analyst people to try to make sure that we're in magic quadrants? Are we going to hire a big direct sales force? Are we going to outsource our cold calling and appointment setting? Lots of different ways to attack the market. Then the marketing piece of it is, how are we messaging? Are we trying to content schedule where we're just pumping out lots of thought leadership, running webinars, buying lots of ad space so if someone's clicking on anything relevant? Are we paying for services like 6 Sense that look for buyer intent and then going to try to market to them? So there's a lot of other nuances within the go-to-market strategy, but it's that intersection of how we sell, how we market, and what we spend our money on, which should be very closely linked to lead generation and trying to get qualified leads in that sales can go and chase. And lastly, a very accounting specific term, but it's EBITDA, and you'll hear that referenced, but it's the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. And really that's just sort of a clean cash flow type number. Not too many salespeople need to know that, but if they get into margin analysis with you, if you've got a product that has a variable margin, you may get some accountant types or CFOs that are curious about EBITDA. Definitely affects companies that are trying to raise capital and go through an earnings process as well. They want to know, are they making money? Are they generating earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization? So So there are 10 terms for you. So a mini grad school MBA class for you, but for you as a seller, certainly as you're getting ready for an interview or if you're on a first job, I hope that you can learn those terms, feel more comfortable using them. If you get asked to use them, now you know what they are. So thanks for listening. Hope you tune into the next video. Talk to you soon.